A new look at a bike fatality in 2015 has raised new questions about safety and driver responsibility. Dr. Anita Kerman was on her bike when she was run over by a truck making a turn at Mass Ave and Beacon Street. According to an earlier report by the police, the crash was mainly the fault of the bicyclist, but that's disputed by MassBike. We'd like to welcome the group's executive director, Richard Freese. Thank you very much for being with us, Richard.
Thanks for having me.
Richard, I know there's some things in this video that are too painful to watch and maybe show on the TV news program, but the lead up to the impact, talk about where these two drivers were, because there are two drivers we're talking, the one on the bike and the one in the truck.
Yeah, well, we knew in the bike community, we had learned that there was some pretty profound video evidence, and so we were expecting that maybe this would be a case that would be treated differently. And it's really not just the point of impact that we have to look at. We have to look at the total environment. We're Cambridge and Boston, Mass Ave, Longwood Medical area. There's a lot of bikes. There's a lot of pedestrians. There's just a lot of stuff going on, like any city. But in particular, we knew that the driver had just overtaken her. So a lot of it has to do with the paradigm of a driving mentality. It's like once you're beyond somebody doesn't mean that they're not still there. We've all encountered that despite, regardless of which mode of transit we're using.
Well, one of the earlier write-ups from the police made it seem that the bicyclist was in a place where she shouldn't have been at that particular time, perhaps.
That bicyclist was doing everything as I would prescribe it, as a 35-year veteran of cycling, as the League of American Bicyclists would prescribe it, as MassBike, my organization, would prescribe it. She was doing everything legal and right. Was there a tactical, question about the truck and being to the right of a large vehicle? Sure. But, what kind of a streetscape are we running here? Is this, do you want the Wild Wild West? I mean, because that's kind of what we have here.
So what you say the part of the road that she was in was Sharrows. That's one of those places where instead of a separate vehicle lane and the separate bike lane, you see this perforated line and some kind of overlap.
What is it? Right.
What does that mean exactly?
Well, first off, up until very recently, no driver's license test even asked you anything about bike law or signage or, there's nothing in there about bicycles or pedestrians in the driving license, in the permit exam. That's changed, which is good. The registry's doing great, MassDOT's doing great. But quite often, a lot of people don't understand what that marking means. The Sharrow, the shared use marking. That marking is not there to tell a bike rider where they should be. That marking is to let the motor vehicles and the other users of the road know, a bike might need to move out to share this lane to get around a bus stop. Absent the bus, it's a clear shot. And what's really hard to look at is this is a real good opportunity for people to for law enforcement to really rethink their training and teaching around bike law. That Sharrow marking didn't even exist in Massachusetts, to my knowledge, prior to 2008. The state police, they have, the Police Training Academy, they haven't updated their curriculum there yet and look what we're facing with. We have all these dotted lines, these signs, these shared use, these cycle tracks. These are all new things on the landscape. And I think all of us, need to really just be a little bit more cognizant of what's going on.
From my untrained eye looking at this video, I don't think the bicyclist was rash or headstrong, but I'm not sure there was anything wrong with the truck driver either. I mean, it's possible he just didn't see the bicyclist.
Well, I'll differ there. If I'm using a 13-passenger van or if I'm using a station wagon, I check my mirrors. By our back marking on the timeline, we realized she was in his field of vision for 16 seconds, which is why we called the video 16 seconds. It's about checking your mirrors, about taking extra caution. Here's a driver operating the largest legal vehicle you can get. He's already pretty confused in Boston because he's already made a wrong turn earlier in the video. And it's a matter of bringing the same courtesy we bring to a coffee shop, to a movie theater, to an intersection. Most notably when you're operating a 48-foot trailer. We would argue that the onus is on him to be extra careful and extra cautious. And I would hope you would agree that if I'm driving a cement mixer, I should have an extra burden of responsibility because I have that much more ability to cause damage.
This has been the news. We're talking with Richard Freese from MassBike. Richard, the prosecutors found there was no grounds for a criminal case against the driver, even though he didn't report the accident until some hours later from another state. So, I mean, so what should law enforcement be doing about it at this point?
Well, there's three. We have three objectives here, MassBike. One, we believe this does deserve to go to a court to really look at it, and let's really talk about it in a court of law. We're not saying this guy should be found guilty or do time in jail, but we do believe that this is a great opportunity for us to really review what's going on. Let's look at this driver's record. Let's look at what his state of mind was. Let's look at, this driver was just able to drive away. Number two, we think it's a great time for a conversation with police and police training and enforcement. What do we tolerate? What don't we tolerate on the streets of Boston and all of Massachusetts? And the third thing is let's get a lot of conversation going, even if it's a little bit heated, about the role of how we're going to conduct ourselves on our streets here in Boston and in Massachusetts. And there's a good conversation going on.
What about the ability to see what's happening? I merely get around on work days on foot. And
Sure.
there are times I dash across the street. I know there are no cars or trucks, but all of a sudden I see this bicyclist I didn't notice. And I'm saying, my God, why didn't I see that? What's going on here that we have to be careful about?
Well, I think everybody, and I mean everybody, should be courteous, careful, and cautious. Everybody also, I think that MassBike advocates for enforcement of all rules for all the road users. So we are not looking for special treatment for cyclists. We want the rules to be enforced for everybody. But I think that we're in a time that is changing. We're living in the largest college town in the world. And, we're approaching, going over the Longfellow Bridge in the mornings, we're approaching, 50% of rush hour traffic could be on a bicycle. You're looking at the Longwood Medical area, where so much of our the pride and joy of our academia is going on, and our medical research. That's, even in the winter, it's over 20% is on bicycle, and in the summer it goes up to almost 50%.
And a lot of that bicycle traffic is on the sidewalk, too.
Well, Longwood Medical area has a lot of issues that they got to deal with. I think we really have to rethink a lot of our street design. We really need to work on engineering, but that said, I think that our engineering and MassDOT and even Boston is doing a great job. They're pushing the engineering. I think the enforcement has to catch up, both at the court level and at the police level.
We should mention, if people want to see more about this case and other things you're working on, you've got a website they should look at?
We sure do. MassBike.org. The video is called 16 Seconds. It's kind of gone viral nationally and internationally.
Thank you very much for being with us.
Thanks for having me.
Richard Freese from MassBike.